Welcome, everybody. My name is Nancy Lopez. I'm a board member of DC Refers, and I am excited to welcome you today to our DC Refers Reconnect on bankruptcy resources in DC. We have a highly experienced panel who will introduce you to some of the different organizations that are doing bankruptcy work. And I encourage you to put ideas or chats or questions in the chat as we go along, or also just to feel free to raise your hand as people are speaking if you have questions. Before we dive into bankruptcy work, I want to tell you just a little bit about DC Refers. And so DC Refers is a network of lawyers and mediators. We serve people who are of modest means by connecting them with affordable, reduced fee lawyers and mediators. It's an opportunity to do good while you're doing well. You can connect with clients of all income levels because we're a trusted source of referrals for people throughout the DC area. Our focus is on helping people of modest means, but it's a good resource for all kinds of clients. Lawyers who participate in DC Refers are in a wide variety of practice areas. You may recognize some of the names on our list. And it's great that we have people that practice in so many different areas because the needs are so vast, and it's nice to be able to serve people who have needs in a lot of different practice areas. The top 3 reasons to join DC Refers are to grow your practice, build your network, and bridge the justice gap. But for this summer, there is another reason, a 4th reason, which is that our summer promotion has the application fees waived through August 31st. So if you go to dcrefers.org, you'll be able to see how to apply, what the qualifications are, and not have to pay to join our panel, at least this summer. I also need to mention that we have a summer fundraising challenge going on right now, and you can go to our website to donate and learn more about how we're using the resources that we have to connect people of modest means to affordable legal assistance and mediation help. We ask you to stay connected with us on social media. We're on X and LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. And we've started a monthly newsletter called Justice Link, and you can sign up to be on our email list as well. So we were created to bridge that justice gap for people of modest means who earn too much to get free legal services, but not enough to pay market rates. And we are meeting that goal every day. If you have ideas or suggestions or questions, you can reach out to our program officer, Julia Pergola, and that's her email address, or you can reach out to us in the chat during the program today. And with that, I would like to move to introducing our panelists. And I'm going to do the introductions for all 4 of them, and then I'm going to kind of hand it over to each of them to talk about the programs that they work with. So Anitra Ash-Shakoor is the managing attorney of consumer and bankruptcy law with the DC Bar Pro Bono Center. In this role, she oversees several DC Bar Pro Bono Center projects that deliver pro bono legal information, advice, and representation to low-income individuals in the District of Columbia, including the Consumer Law Resource Center, the Bankruptcy Clinic, and the Advice and Referral Clinic. Prior to joining the Pro Bono Center, Anitra was a partner at Capital Justice Attorneys, LLP, a private consumer law and bankruptcy practice in the District of Columbia. She's also a former chair of the Bar Association of the District of Columbia's Access to Justice Committee. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from Morgan State University and a Juris Doctor from Temple University Beasley School of Law. If any of you are also alum of the same schools, give people a shout out in the chat. Felicia Battista is both a CPA and a lawyer. Since 2017, her practice is focused on pro bono debtor bankruptcy. She's a supervising attorney with Craig Young at the DC Bankruptcy Assistance Center and also participates at the Northern Virginia Bankruptcy Assistance Center. She has a BBA in accounting from George Washington University and a Juris Doctorate from the Catholic University of America, Columbus School of Law. Craig Young is of counsel at Kutak Rock, LLP. For 40 years, his practice has centered on commercial litigation, including creditors' rights in bankruptcy law. He is the author of numerous articles and the book Bankruptcy and Its Impact on Intellectual Property, published by the American Bankruptcy Institute. Craig is also an adjunct professor at Antonin Scalia Law School at George Mason University, where he's taught bankruptcy law for more than 24 years. He's active in his community, serving as a conciliator for the Fairfax County Circuit Court and as a supervisor for the Northern Virginia and DC Bankruptcy Assistance Clinics. His bachelor's degree and Master of Science in Management degrees come from the American University, and his JD is from George Mason University. Frank Morris II has been practicing law for more than 25 years and currently serves as chairman of the National Bar Association's Bankruptcy Law Section. He also represents people who've been seriously injured in auto accidents and other catastrophes. His JD comes from North Carolina Central University, and he holds an LLM from NYU School of Law. So thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today. And then I'm going to kick us off with Anitra Ash-Shakoor from the DC Bar Pro Bono Center.
Thank you, Nancy. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here and to speak with you about the DC Bar Pro Bono Center's bankruptcy law programs. I've been with the Pro Bono Center for almost 2 years, and I manage these programs among others. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just briefly, the DC Bar Pro Bono Center has a mission to enhance access to justice, to improve the legal system, and to empower lawyers to achieve excellence. This is facilitated largely through our full representation in brief services, pro bono clinics, and resource centers. We partner with other legal services providers, about 1,500 volunteer attorneys, including government attorneys from the federal government pro bono program and law students from area law schools. I actually see my law school coordinator in the audience. And then our clients are pro se of limited means with issues arising under DC or federal law. Next slide, please. We have a long-standing full representation bankruptcy clinic that provides Chapter 7 legal representation to individuals who fall within 300% of the federal poverty limit. Our prospective clients come to us directly, or they are sent over as referrals from other legal services providers. And then after a thorough intake process, appropriate cases are then placed with volunteer attorneys. I also handle some cases directly on occasion. And then we also offer a bankruptcy training to legal professionals each fall. Our training schedule for this September is open to interested registrants. Next slide, please. Our bankruptcy clinic provides ongoing support to our volunteer attorneys. Historically, we've received an average of about 80 referrals per year. This year, we are trending around that amount, rebounding from historical lows that were brought about by the pandemic. We've placed approximately 40 Chapter 7 cases this year, and I've personally filed about 15 of those. Next slide, please. Our brief services clinic is our relatively new bankruptcy resource center, which is a virtual program that is held every other Friday. Here we assist pro se bankruptcy filers in Chapter 7 cases. I started this program with the support of the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the District of Columbia and with the support of our sole judge in this jurisdiction, Judge Gunn. I knew it would be an important program because for some reason, Washington, D.C. has an incredibly high number of pro se filers. And those filings put a strain on the court, on the case trustees. In addition, and most importantly, people are not obtaining the relief that they desire and that they're eligible for, primarily due to their inability to navigate the legal process alone. Next slide. The services we provide are varied, but they include reviewing filed pleadings, providing legal advice, We assist with the curing of defaults and show cause orders. Judge Gunn is really patient in this jurisdiction where she could just dismiss a lot of filings that are just not filed correctly. She is issuing show cause orders and scheduling hearings, letting pro se filers or anyone who's made a mistake know what they did wrong and give them the opportunity to correct any misfilings. So we amend petition and schedules. We sometimes provide referrals for the mandatory post-filing financial management course. We assist with the submission of Section 521 documents, and we also assist with reaffirmation agreements, credit reports, and sometimes something as simple as assisting folks navigate Zoom or work Zoom for their hearing. Next slide, please, which is my final slide. It just has my contact information, and I wanted to thank everyone for allowing me to talk about our programs. Thank you.
You can ask, do people have questions about the DC Bar Pro Bono Center's program or things they're interested in knowing more about? You guys are busy and you do a lot. And yes, we will share the slides after the program, and the program's recorded so you can look at it on Zoom or on YouTube, on our YouTube channel afterwards. We'll send that out by email. Jody, do you have a question?
I do have a question. Hi, Anitra.
Hi, Jody.
So for representation, for the bankruptcy clinic, that's full representation.
Yes.
Can members of the public reach that directly, or do they need to be routed through the clinic, the brief advice clinic or the advice and referral clinic?
That's a great question. Historically, it was referrals only, but I've opened it up. Folks can contact us directly.
So who do they contact? Like
they can, I left my email address on the slide. Actually, the bankruptcy clinic at dcbar.org is email, because it'll get to my program specialist and she'll schedule the first intake.
Okay.
Again, that's bankruptcy clinic at dcbar.org.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Nancy.
Are there any other questions for Anitra right now? Okay. Then I think Craig and Felicia are going to talk about their program.
Hello, everybody. This is Craig Young. Almost about 10 years ago, Judge S. Martin Teal, now retired, reached out to a friend of mine, Jeff Sherman, and said, we're having a big problem. We have so many pro se filers in DC, and they're making so many mistakes. Can you come up with something to help solve this problem? And Jeff came up with the idea every other Friday, the first and third Friday of every month. He started up a clinic which met in a vacant courtroom in the DC courthouse. And any pro se individual could walk into the clinic and ask questions, get help. We have continued that. And in fact, the U.S. trustee asked Jeff to do something in Virginia, Northern Virginia. Jeff cajoled me into buying him lunch, at which he asked me if I would set up a similar clinic in Northern Virginia, which I did. So we now have a DC clinic and a Northern Virginia clinic. The way our clinic works, the first and third Friday of every month from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m., we're in DC. Before the pandemic, we did it in, like I said, a vacant courtroom in the courthouse. That courtroom was not available after the pandemic allowed us back into the courthouse. So we worked something out with the DC Superior Court. We now meet, or we're available in Building B of the DC Superior Court in Conference Room 123. And then on the second and fourth Friday, we do the same thing, only we do it in the Bankruptcy Court in Alexandria, Virginia, for the Northern Virginia Bankruptcy Court. Essentially, our process is we are open to anybody that wants to walk through the door and ask any bankruptcy-related question that they might have. We have no dollar limit. We have no financial requirement. It's literally anyone can walk in and ask for our counsel, advice, etc. We even occasionally get a creditor who walks in and asks us, how do I collect my what's owed to me? This individual or this company has filed bankruptcy. We are not a organized entity. We're not incorporated. We're not affiliated directly with the District of Columbia or the Virginia Secretary of State. We're just Felicia, Battista, Craig Young, and a group of volunteers who show up on Friday to help us answer folks' questions. We also have a list of bankruptcy attorneys who are willing to do either pro bono or what we call low bono representation. In particular, anyone who walks in and it's clear that they need to file a Chapter 13 rather than a Chapter 7, Chapter 13 is going to go on for at least 3 years and possibly 5 years. During that time, all kinds of things are going to happen. So we always recommend an individual who needs to file Chapter 13, we always recommend they have counsel to represent them. And that's where our list of volunteers who are willing to do low bono fees comes into play. We can refer the individual that needs to file Chapter 13 to one of our volunteer attorneys so that they do get legal representation and they can work out with the attorney how to pay a lower fee than might otherwise be the case. Sum it all up, every Friday, either in DC or Northern Virginia, we are available for anybody that wants to walk through the door and ask us any question. We will give them advice, we'll help them fill out their forms and answer any questions. And by the way, you should also know, a lot of the referrals that we get come directly from the judges. Judge Gunn in DC and our 2 bankruptcy judges in Northern Virginia. When a pro se approaches the court, the podium, the judges will frequently tell them the clinic is going to be open on Friday at such and such a location. You should go to the clinic and ask them for help doing whatever it is they're doing. Felicia, did I leave anything out?
No, I just wanted to, you stole my thunder. So everything you said was correct. And I just wanted to add just a couple things. We are always looking for volunteers that are have bankruptcy volunteers. A couple of things, you must be in good standing with the bar. And if you can look at, if you're familiar with the DC local bankruptcy rule, 2090-3, you can take a look at that. And also, I just wanted to mention that because we're independent, we do not provide liability insurance, so you must have your own liability insurance. But we're always happy to answer any questions for any volunteers. If you are interested, you can email me at fcblaw@yahoo.com. And I can, I'll take a look at it and get back to you. But I just wanted to mention that that we are independent, so we do not provide any liability insurance. Thanks, Nancy. Thank you.
Let me ask if anyone has questions for you. I have to say there are so many similarities between what you all are doing and DC Refers, with being volunteer driven and focused on bridging the justice gap for people who can't afford market rates, and a very kind of roll up your sleeves and help people out kind of approach. Also, DC Refers, you have to be a member in good standing and have your own malpractice insurance. So all of those things make a lot of sense. And it's great that you're putting that resource available for the courts, and to be on site at the courthouses is a really big assist.
Thanks, Nancy. Does anybody have any questions for us? Okay.
Then I think we are going to hand it over to Frank Morris, who is going to tell us about the Bar Association of DC's Bankruptcy Assistance Project or Access to Justice Project.
Thank you, Nancy. I am Frank Morris, and the Bar Association of the District of Columbia does have an Access to Justice project, which was formed to provide increased access to individuals living in DC who needed bankruptcy services. It's really a panel of attorneys, and from my experience, it's attorneys in private practice who have agreed to provide reduced costs or low Bono or free costs bankruptcy for individuals who may want to do a Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy case or a Chapter 13 reorganization. The BADC website has a really laid out, easy step-by-step process where individuals could go through to sign up and be referred to an attorney who participates. Now, in order to qualify though, your income must be, for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, your income must be 150% below the federal poverty guidelines. I looked those guidelines up, and there is a chart, and the income varies depending on your household size. But the guidelines are very low. So individuals who would qualify for Chapter 7 free of charge certainly need those services for free. If individuals' incomes were above the poverty guidelines, but below 250%, those individuals would receive what's called low Bono services or reduced costs in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The Access to Justice Project does not provide free bankruptcies for individuals needing Chapter 13 bankruptcies. As Craig mentioned earlier, those cases are generally more involved, and they generally extend between 3 to 5 years where the attorney is going to be representing you. So in that case, if you do qualify for the low Bono services, attorneys who have agreed to participate in this project, they have agreed to represent individuals at a reduced fee. And in DC, we refer to it as the no-look fee. And that's pursuant to Bankruptcy Rule 2016-5. And if in fact the attorney agrees to accept your case in that matter, he's not going to require any funds or any attorney's fees up front. However, clients may be required to pay their filing fee, but I have seen in some cases where we file motions to have the filing fee paid in installments. Okay. Now, how do you qualify for the free or reduced free services? As I mentioned before, you can easily go to the website and complete a form. That form will be sent to it'll be sent to me or one of the other screeners. And on that form, you're going to want to include your income and information about your assets, because the very first step is to determine whether or not you qualify for one of these attorneys to accept your case. So this panel of attorneys is something different than the programs that you heard earlier. These are generally private attorneys who are running their own business, and they have agreed to accept a case where they know that they're not going to be earning their regular fee, so they're really giving back to the community. So who are these attorneys? All of these attorneys are members in good standing of the DC Bar or some other federal bar, and they also maintain malpractice insurance. In addition, each one of the attorneys they've already been screened to determine whether or not they have the legal expertise to represent individuals in Chapter 7 and in Chapter 13. Now, these cases are really involved, but they're only for consumer cases. If anyone has like a business bankruptcy, or if they've operated a business and a lot of that debt is business debt, they may still do a Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, but if it's an incorporated entity, then that individual will need to do a Chapter 11, and this project does not provide the low Bono or free services for Chapter 11 type bankruptcies. Are there any questions thus far? No questions? Well, I want to say that since I've been involved with the project, I've filed several bankruptcies for individuals who've come through the Access to Justice project. And since I've been chairing the project, I've received maybe 5 calls, and 2 of them I plan to call on the way home. But this particular type of representation is everything that's necessary to represent a client from the initial evaluation all the way through the conclusion of the bankruptcy, Chapter 7 with the discharge, or Chapter 13 with getting a plan confirmed and following the debtor or individual that filed for the next 3 to 5 years. So we're not providing piecemeal services. We're not getting involved to fix your case. The attorneys through this program is your lawyer. They're representing you throughout the entire program or process. Questions? Since I'm not hearing any questions, in order to sign up, you simply go to the badc.org and follow those instructions there.
Great. It's fantastic that your project gives people full representation. It's nice to have the whole range of services, right? Some people need a little brief advice or assistance, or are navigating things pretty much on their own, but with a little guidance can help. And some people having a lawyer represent them for the whole case is really critical. So it's nice that there's that. I don't know a lot about bankruptcy, and so I am curious from all of you, like, what is the volume of caseloads in DC bankruptcy court? How does it go?
Yeah, I just looked. Okay, so pre-pandemic, DC and Frank can jump in. Pre-pandemic, the number was around 700 to 800 filings across all chapters, right? The pandemic changed all of that, but I checked this week and I believe the court is at number 239. So 239 cases have been filed so far this year, again, across all chapters in DC. You know, we compare that to like a Maryland, sees 14,000, 17,000, DC being a single, city or jurisdiction. And I wanted to add something, Nancy. A lot of the panelists talked about malpractice insurance. I just wanted to mention that the DC Bar Pro Bono Center provides liability insurance to all volunteers. We're a bigger organization, but it provides that. And we don't have to be a seasoned bankruptcy lawyer. So we have the training, and we have a really robust mentor program. Frank is one of our mentors. So junior attorneys that know very little about bankruptcy can take our training and jump right in. I see one of the attorneys in the audience today.
That's a good point. Just like it's nice to have a panoply of services for clients to find the right place, there's also a place for every lawyer, whether they're volunteering or doing it as a low bono, and whether they're experienced bankruptcy attorneys who do this day in and day out and are just giving back by doing low bono work or pro bono work, or whether it's someone exploring a new practice area. Are there other reasons that you think people should volunteer in the bankruptcy area that make it especially a good fit for lawyers?
Well, I'll just say briefly that there are people that really do have a need, that they do need help. And a lot of them, that come through the clinic, they think they can do it themselves, and they can't. Okay, they cannot. And it's nice so that that we, as we said, we take anybody that walks through the door, and we really do help them. And you'd be surprised how appreciative the people are, because they said, we could never do this, we don't understand. And it makes for a successful filing. It makes a successful process, and especially dealing with the trustee, because after you file a bankruptcy, you are assigned to a trustee. They're not judges, they're attorneys, and it just makes the whole process easier for the trustee. But also we explain to them how everything works, because a lot of times people come in and they're so afraid to afraid this, that to file a bankruptcy. They feel that, I had one gentleman come in, and he said, "They're not going to put me in jail, are they?" I said, "No." I said, "Debtor's prison has long gone. We're here to help you." So, you're going to meet all types of people, but we're here to help. We're here to help everybody.
Also, Nancy, in answer to what I think was the direct question, prior to the pandemic, in DC, we had days where we were still going at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, I can attest
Because
to
we had so
that.
many people lined up.
Our-
Go ahead.
Our room was full. I mean, we used to have 30 people waiting for us, and we stayed until we helped everybody. So we said 10 to 1. I never left there before 3:30 in the afternoon. So that shows you that people really do need help.
Also, Felicia, this is a really easy way to build up your pro bono hours and so forth. I mean, taking a Chapter 7 case, even if you didn't have experience and you were going to partner with the DC Pro Bono Center, you can easily get in a Chapter 7, I'm going to estimate between 7 to 10 hours, or probably more, depending on how much time you spend with the case to for your pro bono hours. Because I know every year we have to put that down when we renew our license and so forth. So if you're looking for pro bono hours, this is one way to get it.
Yeah. And Frank said that keyword earlier that people often forget about. A Chapter 7 is a liquidation. So if a person doesn't adequately protect their assets, they can lose them. We had a client at the Bankruptcy Resource Center just recently. The trustee was poised to sell her condo and her car, and he has the authority to do that because she hadn't properly protected them. So we were able to assist, and she was able to keep her assets. So it's really compelling reasons why you would want to do this work.
It makes such a difference in people's lives.
Oh, it does. It really does. I mean, sometimes your heart breaks because when they come in, they're so, a lot of them are scared. I say, "Come on and sit down. Let's see what we can do for you."
Are there other folks in the audience who have questions for these folks?
Somebody put on the chat list a question about using bankruptcy to avoid paying child support obligations. Let me just briefly address that. In 2005, Congress did several amendments to the bankruptcy code, and several of those amendments directly address the question of domestic support obligations. Specifically, there are several instances in the bankruptcy code that make very clear you cannot avoid domestic support obligations in bankruptcy. In fact, the court will not grant a discharge or grant a closing of a bankruptcy case until the debtor is current on domestic support obligations. So the simple answer to the question is you can't avoid child support or spousal support, domestic support obligations by filing bankruptcy. And you have to bring yourself current on those obligations before your bankruptcy can be completed.
And Craig, that might be one of the reasons why someone would file a Chapter 13 as opposed to a Chapter 7, where in that 13, they could manage those arrears from the child support or domestic support obligations and spread it out over 5 years and try to get current.
Correct. At the end of 5 years, though, the case will not be closed, and the discharge in a Chapter 13 that you get will not be granted unless the domestic support obligations have, in fact, been brought current.
And that makes me think, I'm going to ask on behalf of all of our legal services attorneys who are here, if they have questions like that one, can they reach out to all of you for
Definitely.
help
Absolutely.
They're not
Yeah.
the bankruptcy expert, but
That's okay, but you know, it's, ask the question because that will help them.
Yes.
excellent. When we send out the follow-up email, we'll share everybody's names and email addresses. So if they have questions, they have a way to reach out to our panelists. Jody, do you have another question?
Sorry, just really quick. Did I hear you correctly that you said only about 200 bankruptcies have been filed this year?
I looked on Monday and it was
Oh.
number 239. Yeah, 239.
I wish that number seems very low to me,
Yeah,
just
it is.
comparatively to, you know, all the other areas of people who need free help. So I was
Yeah.
just curious, like, whether you all feel that with the resources you have between your three groups, plus, you know, other resources like DC refers, do you feel like everyone who needs the help is getting help, or?
Great question. I know that, you know, coming out of the pandemic, there was supposed to be this tsunami of cases. Different jurisdictions are rebounding differently. I think Maryland has a really rebound. I know Frank practices in Maryland, but DC is still lagging behind a bit from, again, a typical 700 to 800. We're at 239, but that surpasses last year. So the number is increasing, but slower.
And
One thing, I'm sorry, Craig, I just wanted to mention, one thing to note is if you filed, you got a discharge in, if you file for bankruptcy and you get your got your discharge, you have to wait 8 years before you refile. And you'd be surprised people that come in, I filed 2 years ago, I need to file again. You know, that's for chapter 7, and they have to wait 4 years for a 13. So, you would think sometimes people would learn their lesson, you know, that, you know, you got a free bite of the apple. And I invariably see people that say, well, when did you file? Oh, last year. I said, no, you have to wait. You have to wait that 8 years from filing date. So.
And also, Jody, one of the things that we saw happening during the pandemic, the federal government and several state governments stepped in and provided financial assistance to people. Individuals were getting $300-400 a month, and for a lot of those people, that subsidy or payment from the government staved everything off for them so that they could avoid having to file bankruptcy. Those payments to individuals and to small businesses as well have now come to an end. And we are seeing areas around the country where the number of filings are starting to go back up to where they were prior to the pandemic. We haven't seen it, Anitra is correct, we haven't seen it so much in DC yet. And I attribute that to just the fact we have so much government contracting still going on. I think it's going to be a little bit longer before we see the numbers go back up to where they were, but they are starting to climb again. So we had a respite, if you will, for a couple of years because the government was subsidizing everybody. That's gone, and I think we're going to start seeing the number of filings going up again.
Yeah, also, Craig, in DC, when we look at the foreclosure rate and things of that nature, it takes several years to work a foreclosure through the DC Superior Court.
Right.
And what happens is when a person finally gets to the end, when there's that judgment of foreclosure, that's a very difficult Chapter 13 because the arrears are very substantial. And what I've seen when people are in that position, they're not always the most rational, and the advice that you provide, they may not want to receive anything other than if I'm not going to keep my house, they don't want to hear anything other than a plan to keep the house. And if you're going to qualify for low Bono Chapter 13, where you're going to be 250% or below 250% of the poverty level, that's going to tell you that you probably don't have sufficient income to pay back $100,000 or $200,000 in mortgage arrears. So that's a challenge, and I think that's probably preventing a lot of individuals from filing. I think they're probably selling their property or filing their own case pro bono or pro se, and not going to counsel to do it because counsel will advise them otherwise.
Right,
And then,
yeah,
then they're not, they're not going to be successful doing it themselves because it's very complicated to file. And Frank, you're right. I mean, we've had people come into the clinic and they're not working. They're 6 years in arrears of their mortgage for their home. There's no way they're going to be able, and they're going into foreclosure. There's no way they're going to be able to sell their house. I mean, keep their house.
Right.
And a lot of people don't want to hear that. So you're also a counselor when when you're also like a psychiatrist when you're talking to these people, because you have to, try to reason with them and explain to them that you're just not going to be successful. But people hold their house dear to their heart and they don't want to give up their house. So, because we always say you're not going to be successful. You should get a real estate agent and sell the house so you can get a good price for the house. You have equity. I mean, I said, if you go to foreclosure, you're just going to sell it, and because they're not in the business of selling houses. So you try.
The people are in difficult situations, and legal advice is helpful, even if it's hard to hear. So, absolutely.
I gotta tell you, DC is one of the best. I know it's not a state, but the best place to file Chapter 7 as a homeowner because of their homestead exemption.
Right. That's right.
That's very, very rare. So if the Chapter 7 individuals are coming through and they have substantial other debt other than the mortgage, I mean, you can really use it as a estate planning tool as well. I've represented individuals. I think the oldest client I had was maybe 90 something years old. Substantial amount of credit card debt where creditors should not have even, presented it to him, right? And we used it. He filed his 7, became totally debt free, and now he could transfer well to the next generation.
Right. But DC also too has DC exemptions and federal exemptions. So the DC exemptions will exempt your home. So a lot of the states only have federal, so they don't have that that reciprocity, just like DC, where there is an out to save the house. So I mean, I think that's great for DC because you've always asked them, well, what do you have? And you always think DC, you want to take the DC exemptions because the trustee's not going to go after that asset to sell. Because what happens is when you file a bankruptcy, the trustee is, let's say a 70, you have a house, the trustee is going to look for assets that you have so they can sell to pay off those unsecured debts. And if you use the DC exemptions, that shields those assets, like a house from the trustee, so they cannot sell the house.
Bankruptcy is complicated. So I am glad that you are all there to provide guidance and counsel for people. I see that we are at our ending time. And so I really want to say thank you to all of our panelists. This was really informative. It's great to have a better understanding of the resources in DC. And it's great that all of you clearly care a lot about the work that you do and the people that you're helping. And so thank you for that. Thank you for being here with us today. For all of those joining, we'll send out an email with the PowerPoint slides and email contacts and a link to the YouTube video. So if you want to look at it again or share it with somebody who wasn't able to be here today, you can do that. So thank you everyone for joining us.
And thank you, Nancy, for creating this program. It's great.
Thank you, Nancy.
Good afternoon. Bye-bye.